The sun goes through its natural cycles, for example, solar minimum and solar maximum. And some of these solar cycles, periods of the solar cycle, come with certain risks, especially when we're going into a period of a new cycle where the overall output of the sun may, over time, be a lot less, resulting in potentially the fall of civilization if we have a collapse of our Earth's magnetic field. So there's a certain reality that I just want to start with, and we'll get into the article. Solar flares, solar activity, especially solar flares interacting with our Earth's magnetic field, are inherently good, even though there's risk to the grid. We could see periods between more sunspots and more wars. More solar activity is essentially more life and feeds into that, gives energy to that heliosphere, which, of course, is this field of energy powered by the solar ambient energy in our part of the universe, where the Earth is and other planets. We're protected by this heliosphere. It's all interconnected. When we have a less active sun, as scientists have been concerned about for a number of years, right, you have a weakened heliosphere, and that leaves us vulnerable to all types of things. So let me just say this. I'm going to read a little bit from the article. I've always addressed things, politics, society, including the study of the sun, from an outside the box perspective. So there's a rise now in channels where they're talking about 2030 and beyond. And it's somewhat of an apocalyptic view of the future, kind of like another 2012 thing that could start any time now. And so what I am doing for you now is showing you that there is widespread concern about a solar minimum that could lead to crop failures, that can lead to widespread starvation. But I want to let you know, as I cover, right, what people are talking about most, that that's just one side. This is really an appetizer for whatever we're going to experience in the 2020s coming out of the solar minimum. Sure, we may be moving into a larger cycle of a less active sun, and that's what all this is about. But a lot of people don't know that there is a solar maximum and a solar minimum. So we're going to come out of the solar minimum. The question is, what are we going to be coming out of? If we're going to be coming out of a cycle where we could be seeing a lot of crop failure in the next few years, well, a society that has billions of people on it, alive at the same time, that are dependent on the various types of monocrops. Specifically, we have a nation that is in debt, like our nation, to China. When you look at the geopolitical risks, then you add in the solar influence, lack of sun, lack of certain types of energies needed to provide a certain amount of food, that could potentially be a catastrophic situation. Could the powers that be have already wargamed this? Do they have technology that they are using to study the sun? Absolutely. Are they at a certain level of understanding regarding the cycles and what could be coming, more so than what they've told us? More than likely. Is it more than likely that we have been led, many people have been led intentionally astray by the flat earth memes around the internet? I think so. A couple years ago, it was normal to talk about the sun. Nowadays, right, certain people might appear in the comment section to say that the sun doesn't exist, that there's something wrong with this conversation. And instead of them feeling more like a truther, it feels more like that energy of the inquisitive, Inquisition from the church 2,000 years ago. Don't talk about the sun. Thou shalt not put the sun before our God. And it is very old world, where you see people try to shut us down for trying to have a normal conversation, as above, so below. So let's take a look at this report. This is from the Express. The sun has experienced more than 2 weeks of consecutive days without sunspots. Now, this was on July 12th. At the moment that I'm talking with you now, it's the 23rd. Another thing that you might want to be aware of is that geomagnetic storms that do affect our consciousness, our dream states, I would even say the paranormal, we still do experience geomagnetic storms during periods in which there are no sunspots. This has to do with coronal hole activity and these energetic portals that connect the sun to the earth. Okay, so the sun could be quiet on the surface, but other activity, other solar activity, could make its way to the earth through solar rain, through these electromagnetic clouds erupting from the sun, interacting with our world. So life does continue, even during quiet periods. It's just that, again, we're alive now, just like we're alive now with the grid, where people are dependent on their ATMs. They're dependent on things not being interrupted by massive solar flares. You see what I'm saying? Like, people are used to things going along, business as usual on a planet with billions of people, and they're not really ready. We aren't really ready, one could say. Maybe we are, some of us spiritually. Maybe we are ready for this period in which we could see a massive civilization reset. Others, I think that there's a lot of confusion. I think that ultimately a lot of people feel this, and not everybody is taking the news well. I'm just going to say this point and then get back to this. So when we read about an increase in suicides and wars and person-to-person crimes on a subconscious level, those people could be reacting to the reality of we're living out this period of the potential end of civilization. Periods in which we've used up a certain amount of resources, we're killing off a certain amount of the people, and then we're seeing the realities of the fluctuations of the sun. The threats from the solar maximum or even solar cycles or solar flares that can make its way through our magnetic field, which could take place during the solar minimum. To also other realities that we're waking up to. If you didn't know, if the sun regulates fertility cycles, periods in which there are less and more miscarriages, well, this is perhaps the first time that you're hearing about this. There is a link between cosmic rays and miscarriages. That's less people being born. And we're moving to this period of more cosmic rays, more miscarriages. Okay, going to the article here. Experts believe that this is evidence that the sun is heading towards the solar minimum. Now, again, the solar minimum is a natural cycle, so is the solar maximum. The concern that people have is that it's going to be a deep solar minimum during this period. And so we're going to be watching crops across the United States over the next few years. The thing that I also want to add, and I'll be brief at this point. I'll go ahead and read this. Yeah, during the solar maximum, for those that don't know, the sun gives off more heat and is littered with sunspots. And then if you read my ebook, you'll learn that there are more wars, and perhaps these wars are staged by the elite that know how humans respond. That's my speculation. And you can learn about that at solarmaxnews.com. Click on the ebook and read it for free. Okay. And I want to expand that knowledge. If we just look at the periods of protests during solar maximums, or periods in which there are more drive-by shootings in Chicago after a night of geomagnetic storms, no one's tracked that. But I've been paying attention to those trends myself as an individual for at least 12 years. 10 to 12 years. And it's also one of the reasons why I chose to move out of Portland, Oregon, because when you have more of this electromagnetic energy coming from the sun, all that 5G, cell phone tower, unnatural electromagnetic energy is, as far as I'm concerned, it's toxic. That's what's making these cities toxic. It's not just the 5G, it's when you combine all that unnatural cell technology, concrete, right? And all that concrete just makes that electromagnetic energy bounce off the buildings back and forth. Thus, you have more crazy people running around. There's a reason why I'm coming to you from off the grid right now. I'm using satellite, and I'm using solar panels. In the event of some grid disruptions, there is a possibility, if the satellites were still up, that I can still come to you in some circumstances. But there is a reason I did choose to relocate to Colorado, to a rural part of Colorado. And even if life's a little bit isolating, and it is, there's a benefit to being in areas that that aren't super cool, that aren't super populated. And I believe this is a natural cycle. I'm not afraid of it. I want to say this. There's a lot of people that gravitate to looking at this stuff from a perspective of fear, or only looking at things like solar minimum and crop failure, and maybe not looking at other major, amazing, even beautiful, and I would say spiritual understandings about the sun's impact on consciousness. So, what I would suggest, if this is new to some people, start here and then go to other areas. Type in solar cycles and cycles of war. Read Burl Payne's content. If you don't want to read my ebook, or if it's not explaining it in the way that it should, go over to Mitch Batros, who wrote Solar Rain, and his book's right to the next to me. There's a lot of different information out there that I think can help people have a spiritual experience, because that's what this is about. I think it's a very spiritual thing to have an interest in the sun. And I think that traditionally there has been a war on not only Gnostics, but people that have operated outside of, Orthodox, just like you have Sufis in the East. And you have people that have looked at certain elements of science. And so on one level, in our day and age, when we think about societies that have looked into certain knowledge, information, even work to preserve that knowledge by making sure that that it only reached those people that were worthy of it. See, this planet has a bloody history of burying knowledge. So someone could be speculating today about NASA burying knowledge. And someone could be trying to misdirect us to flat Earth and try to guilt trip us into, having some sort of a sense of connection to the sun, because we don't believe that it's a false light bulb in the sky. And if you didn't know that millions of people now do believe that it's a false light bulb in the sky, that may not be connected to spirit, that's just this part of this conspiracy. Well, now I'm letting you know that to some people, the Truman Show isn't just a movie. And, the Truman Show itself is a good movie, by the way. And there are spiritual themes you can take about the archonic interference in human affairs from the Truman Show. But take the Truman Show or other memes and to make it about this flat Earth thing. Now, Jim Carrey actually met David Icke recently. I'm not so sure Carrey's much into the flat Earth thing. But I want people to understand, I'm saying to you, it's not an accident during this day and age and period in which the activity of the sun is very, very important. And there's so many different aspects that you may not have thought of. It's not just about crop failures. It's about the cycles of war. It's not just about the cycles of war. It's about the cycles of new breakthroughs in human society and innovative thinking. When the magnetic fields of the solar maximum explode and affect the magnetic fields of the sentient human beings and other forms of life, triggering evolutions, this is a science that a lot of people still don't understand, like the basic building blocks of life. This is more important than theories about how human cells work in the body. And it's argued that the actual Western science that's being taught anyways in the public educational school system is very obsolete. And in some ways, it isn't even accurate, what they tell us about genetics. So the interview between Art Bell and Bruce Lipton, by the way, is very interesting regarding epigenetics. And that's just one level of interest. But when we talk about the sun, this is big. Because when we understand the cycles of the sun, we can understand the cycles of human trends, periods and upheavals, periods in which the dark occult staged their world wars, right? As I look towards the 2020s, and I make my projection based on the study of the solar cycle that goes on for thousands of years. Alexander Chavinsky of Russia discovered that periods of increased sunspots correlated with periods of nations being invaded or attacked, major battles. How did he figure this out? Through personal gnosis. He was a soldier during the Russian Revolution. It was 1917. And he was literally studying the sun with the telescope at the time while seeing crazy battles on the field firsthand. And he put two and two together, and his hypothesis began. And then he looked for, after his own initial experience gnosis of seeing the correlation, he's thinking, I wonder if this happened before, where the sun was more active and there was more people killing each other. And then he found a correlation. And then he built a chart, a graph, which is in my ebook at the site that I referenced, solarmaxnews.com. And in this chart, I feature something that goes back a few hundred years. There are others that go back a few thousand years. There are these different charts that are plotting with basic statistics before even the age of the computer. Here's the period in which these things are happening. Here is the sunspot count. Here's how they were looking at sunspots, Galileo, back in 1600 through those types of telescopes. And now we're being told in the year 2018 that we're to listen to random people on the internet with anonymous handles that the earth is flat and just put blind faith in randomness, to not trust our inner gnosis. And I'm telling you, and it might be a little bit long-winded, there's not an accident right now that this flat earth meme is coming at us, as the major changes in the sun that are coming at us could interrupt civilization. Something out there somewhere wants us as confused about every element of reality. And so we have a choice to make, right? And whether we're going to use this knowledge that's on the internet to empower us, to help us understand, and potentially in some cases to relocate to better areas. You know, I'll share this brief story and then I'll close. I had traffic court where my resources are going to be extorted from me. Several weeks ago, I actually go back for quote unquote sentencing. I love how the judge said how driving without insurance actually has a sentencing maximum of 10 days in jail. Hell, I'm hurting so much for economics. Maybe they should let me keep the 300 and put me in jail for 10 days. Certainly make more money doing that than save more money doing that than what I'm bringing in doing YouTube, as sad as that is. But I keep going forward and sharing this knowledge because there are people out there that are benefiting from it. This is not pop culture, right? We're not covering the left-right paradigm. This is something spiritual that strikes a chord with some of you, and it strikes a chord with me, and it surpasses the political divide. There are people that don't even agree with some of the statements that I make about the left-right divide, and they watch the channel anyways because of that spiritual content that I'm able to separate from whatever's happening at the White House today. So I'm going to leave it at that.